Before this video starts, I'd just like to make an announcement. I have the Liberal Tears mug for $14.99 on my website. It is the first link in the description if you want to go pick one up. Don't worry if it breaks when it comes to your house. I'll send you another one for free out of my pocket. I don't care. I want you to get your Liberal Tear mug. It comes in Liberal Tears white with the face, black with the face, white without the face, and black without the face. So pick whichever one you want, and it'll come to your door in about 3 to 5 days. So that should be epic. First link in the description. Thank you. Let's go on with the video.
That is not my primary concern. I have two primary concerns when it comes to the Syrian refugees. One is obviously the fact that we can't screen them. And despite the Obama administration's protestations that yes, we have beautiful vetting procedures, right? The same vetting procedures that got you Major Nidal Hassan, the same vetting procedures that got you the Chattanooga, Tennessee shooter, the same vetting procedures that got you the Sarnia brothers, right? All of these vetting procedures, they say that they're going to do biometric scans, which are completely useless unless you actually have physical evidence of these people committing criminal acts elsewhere, right? You have nothing to scan them against. It's like saying they're going to fingerprint these folks. Well, unless you have fingerprints at a crime scene somewhere else, that doesn't make any difference. They say that they're going to interview them. What does that interview look like? I mean, really, what is that? They say apparently the people doing the interviews have 8 days of training on Syria, and then they're thrown right in. They say that they're going to do background checks. By calling whom? Who do you actually call? Do you call Bashar Assad and ask him for his information? Right? So it's nonsensical. People on Homeland Security Committee know this is nonsensical. Today, the House passed a bill curbing Syrian immigration after Homeland Security came and made a presentation. They actually lost votes after the Homeland Security presentation. So that's one issue. The other issue is, what is the nature of the immigrants that you're bringing in, period? And this is not a religious issue, it's a values issue. Are the people who you're bringing in going to make the country a better place, or are they going to make the country a more polarized place? Do they have any experience with Western-style democracy? Do they believe in any of the same American rights that we believe in, or not? And that's a very relevant question to ask about any immigrant and any class of immigrants. Now, do I think it's stupid to say you're not going to bring in 5-year-old orphans? Yes, I think that's dumb. But do I think that it's not stupid to say you ought to look at the values of the people that you're bringing in? I would say that about people of any religion. And the fact is that when you're talking about people who are coming from a place like Syria, which has no history of democracy, no history of human rights, no history of basic American rights like freedom of speech, no idea of what equality of sexes looks like, there's going to be a culture clash. Look at Europe. Europe is full of culture clash because of the vast wave of Muslim immigration. So on those two levels, I'm extremely worried about the Syrian refugee wave. And by the way, question for the Ummah, right, the Muslim nation that is supposed to take everybody in. There are 1 billion Muslims on planet Earth, and there are 52 Islamic majority countries on planet Earth. None of you have room for these folks? None of you? Right? Turkey is taking in about 2 million of them. 15% are still in refugee camps. The truth is that the Ummah has a pretty poor record of taking in refugees. Right? For all the talk about how it's the Israelis who are victimizing the Palestinians, for example, there are still, 70 years later, 10 refugee camps in Jordan. There are 13 refugee camps full of Palestinians in Syria. There are refugee camps in the south of Lebanon for Palestinians 2 generations after the creation of Israel. By contrast, Israel has taken in every wave of Jewish refugees that has ever existed. So you know, I'm getting tired of hearing the sort of unearned moral superiority of the Muslim world when it comes to, oh, you Westerners, you have to take our refugees.
Ben writes, what is the best way to handle the refugees coming out of Syria? Have there been studies showing that refugees do better when they stay in their country, or any negative effects for coming to new countries? The best way to handle the refugees coming out of Syria is to find countries that are Muslim and that are willing to take them in. I think it's a very silly idea that people who have grown up in an area that has no sense of Western civilization can immediately be transplanted to Western civilization and then thrive. If that were true, it would only exist in a world where Western civilization were in muscular fashion assimilating people. I say muscular, I don't mean forcibly assimilating people. I mean not providing them social benefits to live in small enclaves where all of their worldviews were reinforced by a multicultural ethos. That's what I mean. If you got rid of that, then you can assimilate a lot more people. The United States did this for centuries. Then the welfare system came about. It turned out assimilation's a lot harder when people get a check, even when they're not speaking the national tongue, even when they don't believe in the national value system. So, you know, the best move, I think, here would be to help integrate Syrian refugees into other countries. Honestly, I don't understand. Iran is backing Assad. Iran supposedly wants to be our friend now. Ha 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 ha. Why wouldn't Obama put pressure on Iran to accept Syrian refugees? Right? Why, if Obama thought what was going on in Syria was so bad and Iran's our new friend, why not pressure Iran? Turkey's already taken in 1 to 2 million, I think, Syrian refugees. That seems to me a better solution. Unfortunately, a lot of the Muslim world likes to keep refugees in prison camps, basically, so that they can use them as a political tool against the West. That's what the Palestinians have been about for the last 70 years. Recognize the fact that the Palestinians since 1948 have been living in refugee camps in Arab territories, literally, for 70 years. And that says something about the whole notion of the Islamic Ummah that's going to support their brethren. How about you start by getting rid of the refugee camps and assimilating the people who are the supposed refugees? I'm Ben Shapiro. This is The Ben Shapiro Show. I've been watching the pictures that are coming out of Syria. Obviously, they are horrifying. We talked about this a little bit yesterday. There are all these pictures of dead children who have been gassed to death by the Bashar Assad regime. And that comes just a few days after the Trump administration came out and said Assad would remain in power. I'd said that's not a coincidence. If it had happened under Obama, I would have said the exact same thing. I have a very simple standard when it comes to what I expect from my politicians, and that is, your word matters and what you say has credibility. And it turns out that in foreign policy particularly, it matters when you say things. So the fact that Trump's people said Assad will stay in power and then 3 days later he's gassing children, I don't think that's any sort of major coincidence. A survivor of a 2013 Syria chemical attack, he was on CNN and he was talking about what he thinks Trump should do.
If I may just say a few words directly to President Trump, if you'll just give me the chance.
Please.
Mr. President, please, in the name of every woman and child and elder who got killed by the Assad regime, please come in and help us. Don't make the same mistakes that President Obama did. You criticized Obama for failing to punish and act when Assad crossed the red lines. Now is the moment of truth. Now you should show the world that those days are over. We can't just keep living in this unprecedented crimes against humanity. We just can't keep living like this. I would personally love to come to the United States and meet you and tell you my personal story.
Obviously the media is happy to put this sort of stuff on TV because they're saying, Trump should do something. There are two questions here. One, whose fault is all of this? And two, what should President Trump do right now? Those are the two big questions. It's pretty clear that this is Obama's fault. It's pretty clear that this started under Obama, that it was Obama who was saying for years and years and years that we had disarmed the Assad regime. He proclaimed himself a massive political genius for having drawn a red line, then backed away from the red line after Bashar Assad used chemical weapons against his own people. And then he said that he had disarmed Assad and left Assad in power while Assad continued to gas folks. John McCain correctly says this is Obama's legacy.
He is obviously, as we all are, appalled. Could I make 2 points? One, this is a legacy of Barack Obama. The last time this happened, Barack Obama said they'd crossed a red line, called me and Lindsey Graham down to the White House, said we're going to, and did nothing. One thing worse than doing nothing is saying you're going to do something as the most powerful leader on earth and doing nothing. So this is a legacy of Barack Obama, and it's been going on now for the intervening 4 years. So what we need to do, we need to stop Bashar Assad's planes from flying, and we can do that easily.
You have been bringing this issue up to the forefront. I know it's been a great frustration for you. I got to go, but just very quickly, are safe zones viable?
I mention again, Barack Obama had an opportunity to stop this and would have long ago, and he took a hike, and that's a terrible legacy.
Okay, and McCain is exactly right. And listen, McCain is no friend of Trump, so when he says this is on Obama, you can trust that Senator McCain is exactly right on this. This certainly is on Obama. So the question really is what's going to happen in Syria now with the Trump administration, because this is a fly-by-night, seat-of-the-pants operation with regard to foreign policy. Basically, you have Nikki Haley, who's a traditional conservative. You have H.R. McMaster, who's a more realist conservative. And then you have Trump, who's a who knows. Right? Nobody knows where he is, and nobody, when people say that Trump was ripping Obama over his Syria policy years ago, he was actually ripping Obama for even getting involved in Syria years ago, saying we never should have drawn a red line, we never should have been involved. So presumably he wouldn't have stopped what was going on in Syria either from Obama. So the application of the criticism that McCain is making to Obama, it still actually applies to Trump as well. So yesterday Trump saw all these images, and this is sort of the danger of Trump. Because Trump doesn't have a coherent worldview, he tends to be very reactionary on his foreign policy. So does he have a strategy on Syria? Not really, because he doesn't have a strategy on Iran. And this is the thing no one wants to talk about. Iran is the sponsor state for Syria. It is also a client state. Syria is a client state of Russia. Trump has been very warm to Russia, but very cold to Iran. So now he's in this weirdly conflicted situation where he doesn't really want to be involved, but the two main forces that are supporting the Syrian regime are enemies of the United States, but one of those regimes he's actually friendly with. So it's this bizarre nonsensical foreign policy. And so what ends up happening is that he doesn't have any policy, and then something bad happens, like you see a bunch of dead kids on TV, and suddenly everybody is clamoring for U.S. involvement, and Trump reacts exactly how you think somebody who's a neophyte would react. Instead of saying, I have a coherent policy, he basically says, this affected me deeply, and I will do something.
The world is a mess. I inherited a mess. Whether it's the Middle East, whether it's North Korea, whether it's so many other things, whether it's in our country, horrible trade deals, I inherited a mess. We're going to fix it.
Okay, and he doesn't say how he's going to fix it. He is correct, of course, that this is a mess. But he's the president now, and it didn't cut a lot of weight with me when Obama would say, I inherited a mess from Bush. Every president says they inherited a mess from their predecessor. Usually they're right. That doesn't mean that they're not president. So what is Trump actually going to do about this? Trump then embraces the language that Obama used and jumps right onto the landmine that Obama jumped onto, and that he told Obama not to jump onto years ago.
Just quickly ask you if the chemical attack crosses a red line for you.
It crossed the lines for me. When you kill innocent children, innocent babies, little babies, with a chemical gas that is so lethal that people were shocked to hear what gas it was, that crosses many, many lines, beyond the red line, many, many lines. Thank you very much.
And
then the follow-up was, so what are you going to do? And he said, I'll tell you about it later. And it's like, well, okay, I guess, but there better be a later. Nikki Haley, who actually has thought about some of these things a little more, she basically threatened action. I don't know that Trump approved this because she's been saying things for a while that Trump says the opposite of. But here's Nikki Haley over at the UN talking about Syria.
When the United Nations consistently fails in its duty to act collectively, there are times in the life of states that we are compelled to take our own action.
And the action that she's threatening is unclear. So here's what they should do. What they should do is they should establish a no-fly zone. We had a no-fly zone over Iraq for a decade. It helped prevent more gassing of the Kurds, like we saw in the aftermath of the Gulf War. And we should establish a no-fly zone. That means putting American jets in the air over Syria, along with our allies, to prevent the Russians and the Iranians and the Syrians from taking up the airspace and gassing people. That would be the ideal. You set that up, and then you have to set up refugee camps or help fund refugee camps, which we are already doing, by the way, and which Trump actually favors. Now, one of the stupider things that I saw was somebody saying, you can't complain about the images of the dead Syrian kids if you don't want to let in refugees, if you believe in Trump's travel ban. This is asinine. Okay, there are lots of other solutions other than letting everybody in who's unvetted to this particular problem. One of the points of setting up a no-fly zone is to prevent people from having to flee the country. One of the points of having a refugee system over there is to prevent people from having to flee to the West. This is, people have compared this to sort of the treatment, the world's treatment of the Jews during the Holocaust. That is absolutely inaccurate. The world shut its borders to Jews all over the world. That is not the same thing as what's happening in Syria right now. There are 58, more than that, I think, Muslim countries around the world who are fully capable of taking in Muslim citizens of Syria. The idea that the first option should be for them to go to Europe or to the United States is just silly. One of the reasons Israel was established, not the only reason, obviously, but one of the reasons Israel was established is because there was no Jewish country to actually absorb refugees in times of crisis like World War II. And now there is, and that's a good thing. And the same thing holds true for Muslim refugees in the Middle East. That's a really poor argument. Is there something Trump could do short of war? Yes. He's going to have to get harsher with the Russians. He's going to have to tell the Russians to back down, that this no-fly zone will be imposed, and that we're going to work together to destroy ISIS. Is he willing to do that? We're going to find out. We're going to find out. But, this is the sort of thing where there's an easier solution than normal, but it does demonstrate how reactive Trump is. And this is what worries me about his personality. Not the kind of silliness of Twitter. It is silly, and he has wasted months on tweeting silly things and then covering up for the silly tweets. But on foreign policy, the way presidents get themselves in trouble is they stick their toe in the water, an alligator bites it, and then they get into a war. That's basically what happens, is that, Trump says something like Assad can stay, Assad gasses a bunch of kids. We set up a no-fly zone in response to that. An American jet gets shot down by the Syrians, and now we're at war with the Assad regime, right? I mean, you could see something like that happening very easily, and the original solution would have been to set up a no-fly zone without actually telling Assad that it was okay to gas children, and then presumably he wouldn't have gassed children in an attempt to regain credibility. But that's not what happened. This is why words matter in foreign policy, and as much as people say we should take Trump seriously but not literally,
Hello, everyone. Hey, I'm just stopping by to remind you that liberals are insane. Social justice warriors are becoming more violent and triggered than ever before. Anyways, be sure to subscribe to KGP TV on YouTube and have a blessed day. Yeah, man.
Have beautiful vetting procedures, right? The same vetting procedures that got you Major Nidal Hassan, the same vetting procedures that got you the Chattanooga, Tennessee shooter, the same vetting procedures that got you the Sarnia brothers, right? All of these vetting procedures, they say that they're going to do biometric scans, which are completely useless unless you actually have physical evidence of these people committing criminal acts elsewhere, right? You have nothing to scan them against. It's like saying they're going to fingerprint these folks. Well, unless you have fingerprints, it's nonsensical. People on Homeland Security Committee know this is nonsensical. Today, the House passed a bill curbing Syrian immigration after Homeland Security came and made a presentation. They actually lost votes after the Homeland Security presentation. So that's one issue. The other issue is, what is the nature of the immigrants that you're bringing in, period? And this is not a religious issue, it's a values issue. Are the people who you're bringing in going to make the country...
Before this video starts, I'd just like to make an announcement. I have the Liberal Tears mug for $14.99 on my website. It is the first link in the description if you want to go pick one up. Don't worry if it breaks when it comes to your house. I'll send you another one for free out of my pocket. I don't care. I want you to get your Liberal Tear mug. It comes in Liberal Tears white with the face, black with the face, white without the face, and black without the face. So pick whichever one you want, and it'll come to your door in about 3 to 5 days. So that should be epic. First link in the description. Thank you. Let's go on with the video.
That is not my primary concern. I have two primary concerns when it comes to the Syrian refugees. One is obviously the fact that we can't screen them. And despite the Obama administration's protestations that yes, we consider a crime scene somewhere else, that doesn't make any difference. They say that they're going to interview them. What does that interview look like? I mean, really, what is that? They say apparently the people doing the interviews have 8 days of training on Syria, and then they're thrown right in. They say that they're going to do background checks. By calling whom? Who do you actually call? Do you call Bashar Assad and ask him for his information? Right?